everyone, and welcome to the Wrestling Academy, a podcast all about wrestling history with no linear timeline or trackable syllabus. So if you're a lifelong fan or if you're brand new, this right here is the podcast for you. My name is Samee Junio, your homecoming king.
And I am your headmaster, Michael Classic, and this is Wrestling Academy Summer School. All summer long, we are going to be loosening our ties, letting down our soaking wet hair to cover Tough Enough Season 1, a reality TV show that came out in 2001.
2001. Nothing else happened this year.
2001. The less you think about world events that went on, the better. Season 1. Don't ask why filming got delayed for a month, you know?
Oh my.
But Samee,
yeah.
We don't have time to unpack any of what happened in 2001 because
You're right.
I and Wrestling Academy as a whole, we are on a journey to see if we can get 1,000 subscribers on YouTube. So
It's
if
true.
you're watching on YouTube or can get to us on YouTube, hit that subscribe button. And to sweeten the deal, when we hit 1,000 subscribers, your homecoming king, Samee Junio, will put me through a table for real.
I am so excited about this, but also very scared about this.
Kind of getting into sort of one of the main focuses of the couple episodes we're about to talk about, Tall Paulina.
Mm-hmm.
She is excited to do wrestling, but is also scared of it. So would you say the more putting me through a table becomes a reality, the more you're like scared of your own power, much like Tall Paulina?
Yeah, cut to me doing a confessional where I'm like, there's so many tables out there that don't have Michael put through them. What about me makes me feel like I deserve to put Michael through a table?
And I'm grabbing the screen being like, no, Samee, you can do it. You got to believe in yourself.
Well, the YouTube subscribers and the table of it all is a side quest much like our search for Ween Kid. In our Royal Rumble episode, we covered the 2008 Royal Rumble, and we were bewitched by a specter in the distance. And we've called them Ween Kid because they're wearing a t-shirt of the band Ween Kid while they kind of disrupt every single entrance of every single wrestler in the Royal Rumble. So if you have any information on Ween Kid, go to our website, wrestlingacademy.university, to leave an anonymous tip or call the anonymous Ween Kid tip line. That number is 708-669-4512. Again, 708-669-4512. Ween Kid, you're out there. We're right here. We're going to get you to hang out with us.
We're bringing you to where we are, which is here.
But if you can't, that's totally fine. We do this virtually.
We just want to make contact, and then what happens from there, we'll figure out the details. We're just a dog chasing cars at the moment. But
Michael, Ween Kid, and YouTube subscribers, that's all in the future. What are we talking about today?
Today, we're going to the Bahamas.
Ooh la la.
And then we are getting career-threatening injuries as we cover episodes 7 and 8 of Tough Enough Season 1.
Oh my gosh. But before we get super deep into all that nonsense, Michael, tell us what has happened up till now.
The WWE and MTV have handpicked 13 contestants to live in a house together, train with WWE superstars Al Snow, Miss Jackie, Tori, and Taz for 9 weeks to find out who will be tough enough. Each week, there will be an elimination until only one man and one woman remain. Their prize? A WWE contract. Our contestants are Dancer Nydia, Stone Cold Josh, Menace to Public Safety Hot Tub Chris, aspiring Playboy Playmate Bobby Joe, Bad Boy Daryl, who seems to make an enemy every single episode, and our personal favorite, Baseball Greg, not to mention bodybuilder Jason, ladies man Maven, Tall Paulina, who needs to believe in herself, stunt woman Victoria, who needs to stop hitting her head, Shadrick McGee, who has no nickname because his name is just that cool, and Taylor, who didn't really appear in any episode until halfway through the season. As things heat up, bodybuilder Jason is scared out of the competition after a stern lecture from Triple H about life on the road. Stunt woman Victoria quits the show after failing to master even the most basic wrestling move, the flatback bump, and our Playboy Playmate Bobby Joe sees Victoria quitting and says, let's make that a double. That's right. 2 quits in 1. Meanwhile, Taylor lights a candle that nearly sets the house on fire. Maven dresses in drag. Ivy Lee, Chris, and Bad Boy Daryl get in a huge fight about groceries, while resident creepy uncle producer Big takes all the boys out for drinks and issues a challenge. Whoever loses at darts has to do push-ups and call the winners his bitch. Bad boy Daryl lost at darts after paying his penance, still became the 4th contestant eliminated from the contest. But then in our most devastating elimination to date, we are forced to say goodbye to Shadrack McGee, who, despite his tremendous show of heart and the promise he made to seduce every single woman in the house during his audition, he was not able to overcome the odds and stay. In the wake of Shadrack's sudden departure, the contestants, especially Tall Paulina for some reason, must mend their broken hearts and carry on.
And now we find ourselves on August 2nd, 2001, with episode 7 of Tough Enough, titled Bahamas or Bust. Michael, do you have any alternative titles for this one?
Alternate title for the episode, Trust No Chris.
Alternative title for this episode, Hot Cross Bahamas.
Alternate titles, Tall Paulina kind of scams a vacation from the Tough Enough crew.
Alternative title, The Tall Ones Fall Down.
Alternative title, if Josh plays his fucking fife one more time, I'm gonna slap it. I'm gonna slap him.
Alternative title, Josh is tone deaf. The episode opens up with the contestants feeling the pain of their training. Folks are wincing, limping, and Tall Paulina has a sit down with Al after revealing that her knee has been hurting for a while now, but she really didn't want to tell anyone. He tells her that she needs to let him know. She needs to let him know when she is actually hurt. When something is wrong, it's better for her to sit out and watch than it is to be in the ring and continue to injure herself.
Which I was really happy to hear, because if you go back to the Triple H episode, episode 3, he's basically like, you need to be grateful to be hurt. Like, I get hurt and I give it 100%. And now the contestants are getting hurt in the contest and not telling their trainers, and the trainers have to be like, hey, please tell us. Yeah. Please tell us.
Yeah, the bruised egos of the visiting superstars, they have to relax.
But I'll be honest with you, I think maybe it had to have been a scheduling thing, because I feel like the wrestler cameos we get from here on out are pretty cool and inspirational, whereas the ones they got initially were super intense. Maybe they wanted to go super hard to weed a bunch of people out, and now they're rewarding everybody who stuck around. But I personally feel like they should have flipped it, because if your trainees are lying about being injured, that's bad. We've done wrong.
I have a counter theory here. I think that they put all of the scary cameos up at the top because I'm bringing in our old villain budget back into the conversation, because if you scare off weaker contestants early on, you don't have to pay for that many people. You know what I mean?
Wait, so they're like, oh shit, we got to take all these kids to the Bahamas.
Let's get the fuck out of them.
Triple H, we need you to weed out bodybuilder Jason. Like, we cannot afford.
He eats too much.
we need 2 seats if bodybuilder Jason sticks around.
That's 16 ounces of steak a sitting. He's got to go.
A day. He's gonna have that every day. He's gonna have that steak.
But also, there is a I don't know if you've noticed it. You probably have, but it feels like after the first 4 episodes, everything kind of calms down as far as like the general show bullying the contestants.
I agree. And I do think that it's one of those things that I'd like to think maybe they started seeing the footage back and were like, hey, chill. Like, this is hey, what if you tried to like be friends with the kids? You know, what if you did that? And they're like, oh yeah, I guess we could.
Yeah, you can break your character now, you guys. It's fine. We're doing a bunch of exclusive footage stuff, so don't even worry about it.
We don't need to drive them to a farm and make them fight for honor. You know, like we could just show them how to do wrestling and talk about how fun it was to break in.
I really feel like that mud wrestling thing kind of sobered up every single person. They're like, wait, we can't go that far. Like, that's way too far. So back at home, we get an explanation of the visitors' situation via the contestants in the conversation with their loved ones on the phone. The deal is, at the beginning of the week, 2 names are drawn randomly, and those contestants get one person to come and visit, and MTV/WWE will pay for their airfare. That's nice. Michael, who would you ask to come visit you?
Samee, I'm so glad that you asked me this question, because I feel like we haven't really gotten into the 2001 of it all.
Haven't.
We haven't really gotten it. We haven't touched it at all, Samee. So I really was trying to put myself in the 2001 mindset. So I did a little bit of digging of, this is stuff that was really popular in 2001, right?
Okay.
So Here's what I found. People magazine named Pierce Brosnan the sexiest man alive in 2001. That'd be a delicious pick to bring to the Tough Enough house. But then I was like, okay, let's go over to music. And I know what you're thinking 2001, Destiny's Child, Independent Women Part 1. That was huge. But Samee, what if I told you, according to the Billboard Hot 100, Destiny's Child didn't even crack the top 10? You know who cracked number 1?
Who?
Lifehouse with Hanging by a Moment.
Hanging by a moment here with you. That snub feels pretty 2001.
That felt incredibly 2001 if you just look at which song has the staying power. But then, so I was thinking like, okay, would I really want to kick it at the Tough Enough house with Lifehouse? The answer is hell no, dude.
That's crazy.
But then, okay, so then I was looking at like, what was the most popular movie in 2001? And it was the release of the very first Harry Potter movie. And that is when I decided the person I would ask producer Big to get to the Tough Enough house would be Rupert Grint, a.k.a. Ron Weasley from Harry Potter.
A.k.a. a 13-year-old ginger.
I was also 13 in 2001. I was also a kid.
Come live in this house with me, you freak.
I was 13. Oh, man.
Okay, Rupert Grint. That's great. I hope your name never got picked. I would buy.
All right, fine. I'd Lifehouse. I'd take Lifehouse to the mansion.
You only get one. Which band member?
The drummer from Lifehouse.
No, I don't feel like you actually want it. I think you can leave your answer as Rupert Grint.
Who is the drummer from Life? Okay, I would take Rick Wollstonhume Jr. to the drummer from Lifehouse. That's who I would pick.
That's a great pick. Great pick. But I still feel like your heart's not in it, and you're okay to choose Rupert Grint.
No, dude, I want Rick Wollstonhume Jr., dude. That's who I want.
Wollstonhume Jr. Say it full chest, dog.
Yeah, the person I would take to the Tough Enough house in 2001 is Rick Wollstonhume Jr., the drummer from Lifehouse. That's who I would take, dude. That's who I want more than anybody else on earth. Is Rick Wollstonhume Jr. Rick Wollstonhume, if you're listening, dude, Rick Wollstonhume, talk to your son, Rick Wollstonhume Jr., and tell him if he ever wants to just kick it in Connecticut with me, I'll fly him out and we'll hang out.
Oh boy.
That's what you get when you back me into a corner. I fly Rick Wollstonhume Jr.
You invoke Rick Wollstonhume Jr.
Yeah,
all right,
that's right.
Fair. I don't regret a thing. Okay, so back at Trax, our special guest this episode. Okay, so back at Trax, our special guest this episode reveals themselves to be the one, the only Kurt Angle, complete with his Olympic gold medals around his neck.
It's just like, dude, relax. You don't need to take him everywhere. Like, I get you're in character, but you don't need to take him everywhere. Come on.
So Kurt tells the contestants the story of how he ripped up Vince McMahon's initial contract offer that was a multi-million-dollar deal. And we talked a little bit about this in a previous episode titled Custody Battle for AJ Styles. Check it out. Kurt changed his mind 2 years after ripping up that contract after watching Raw is War because he realized that the superstars were actually athletes.
That's something that I noticed about the cameos from Kurt Angle in this episode and then who we get in the next episode. There was an undercurrent of, I used to not respect this at all. And I used to think, and it a little bit felt like they were answering those really common criticisms that were in the zeitgeist about pro wrestling. Because again, this came out on MTV. So it really felt like, oh, let's get a little bit of, let's show that side of it too, which honestly, I appreciated. I don't know. I guess it is always just nice to hear how somebody really didn't get it at first and then watching it click. Because as a lifelong fan, I can attest there's nothing that feels greater than taking somebody to wrestling and then they see what it's really all about instead of their preconceived notions. Yeah, it's just fun. And then you can see it click for somebody of just being like, oh, this is fun. This is great.
Kurt continues on to talk about how much he loves professional wrestling. And he talks about the adrenaline rush of performing in front of a live crowd and how it's electrifying and there's nothing like it. And he even goes so far to say, I think that that's what I'm actually addicted to. Kurt?
Samee, here's what I'll say.
Yeah.
For the next 2 years, that's true. What happens after that is who's to say? We don't need to. You don't need to Google it. We don't need to get into that. For this stretch of time, it's the rush of the crowd, man.
We get some exclusive footage here now, and Kurt's training philosophy being an amateur wrestler is completely different than training as a professional wrestler. You pretty much train to look good and you don't want to overdo it and hurt yourself because being in the ring for shows is incredibly grueling on its own. And Kurt starts talking about how he does 30 minutes of cardio every day and weightlifting, and then Taz interrupts because of course he will. And he lays into Ivy League Chris, berating him for asking a question that sounded to Taz that Ivy League Chris was asking for a shortcut or a quick route to success. Taz full-on foaming mouth rants about how Kurt earned his spot, there's no shortcut, and says, you people are not gonna make it that fast. Kurt is rare, and you guys are spoiled. Because I've been thinking about this, but I'll get into that later, because it's Kurt's time now. And Taz's rant leaves Kurt speechless.
Kurt literally goes, oh, man, I'm glad I'm not in his training camp. Like, oh my God. It was nice to hear Kurt Angle being like, okay, Taz is a bit much. But also, what was the context? I was looking around. There's no indication of what Ivy League Chris's initial question was.
That's what grinds my gears, is that we don't hear his fucking question at all. We hear Kurt talk about weight training every day, and then Taz immediately goes in, well, this is what your question sounds like to me. To me, it sounds like you're looking for an escape. It's like, what do you do? What?
And let me just be clear. This is pretty much the last time we're going to cut Ivy League Chris some slack from here on out. Because up until here, Ivy League Chris has not been the worst person in the house. But is that about to change when we go to the Bahamas?
Oh, perhaps. After Taz's tantrum, the contestants go into the ring to show Kurt what they've got. And he gives them some pointers on selling. And selling, Michael, is when somebody hits you and you want to make sure that everybody in the audience, everybody at home knows just how hard they hit you and how much that hurts.
Yeah, it's the theatrical performance of getting hit, basically. So if somebody's putting you in an arm lock, the selling would just be theatrically being like, to indicate to the audience that you're hurt. It's the performance aspect of it, not the athleticism aspect.
Yeah, and Kurt is pretty good seller, I'd say.
I'll be honest with you, there's not a lot of things that Kurt Angle is not good at when it comes to wrestling. So anything he says to do it. So the main thing I took away from Kurt Angle is if you just hit 30 minutes of cardio and lift a little bit of weights, you're good.
But there's no shortcut. There's no shortcuts,
but also 30 minutes of cardio, lift a little bit of weights, you're good.
After being a gold medal winning Olympian, right?
For sure. For decades.
Easy peasy. So before Kurt leaves, he gathers everyone around again and he says, as you know, I've lived my life by the 3 eyes. Well, there's a 4th eye. Your 4th eye is island. You guys are going to the Bahamas. And then he passes out sunglasses that were in a manila envelope, which felt weird to me.
I'll be totally honest with you. It really felt like Kurt Angle was driving over to the facility and he stopped at a gas station for gas and he just saw a bunch of sunglasses and was like, this will be so cool to hand out to the contestants. I'm going to hand these out to everyone. I'm going to look like a fucking hero, dude.
Oh my gosh. So we say farewell to the heroic Kurt Angle and we go back to the house where the contestants are hanging out and packing. And who is it? Josh is even getting his hair bleached by the gals.
A true 2001 move. Before you go on spring break, you bleach your hair.
Gorgeous. And so while Josh is getting his hair dyed, Ivy League Chris is laid up on the couch, icing his shoulders and reading Brace Yourself The Fountainhead by Ayn Rand. Does that explain a couple things to you?
This is also where he's talking about how he, like Ivy League Chris talks about how he treats this, he's business and he's focused and he's here to work. And so he doesn't like to goof around with the other castmates. And then it just cuts to him reading Ayn Rand in his room. Hey, Ivy League Chris, you're coming across crazy. You're coming, like only weirdos do what you're doing.
So we cut to Ivy League Chris in a confessional, and he's basically calling the other castmates stupid. And we see footage of them giggling, and they're like, "Oh, which island or which ocean is the Bahamas in?" And
the Atlantic.
And what language do they speak in the Bahamas?
English.
And they're all just giggling and having a good time while Ivy League is scoffing to himself. He truly doesn't want to have anything to do with them. And as you mentioned just now, Michael, he's treating the competition basically like one long job interview. So he's being, I would say, a little bit too professional to the point where everybody thinks he's a fucking creep.
If you're treating it like an audition or a job interview, part of the most essential ingredient besides do you have the technical skill is, are you chill to hang out with? Mm-hmm. And so far, Ivy League Chris is not chill to hang out with. And so that to me would really hurt him in this competition of being like, I wouldn't want to be stuck in an elevator with Ivy League Chris because this guy is a weirdo.
Let's take Ayn Rand reading Ivy League Chris and compare him to Daryl. At this point of the show, would you swap them out?
I would much rather go to the Bahamas with bad boy Daryl than Ivy League Chris.
Daryl was shit for a wrestler, but probably good company when he got to relax. Maybe?
Yeah, I think he would party. He would have a good time. Whereas Ivy League Chris, well, we'll see what he does.
Yeah, Daryl would get nut loose. All right. So, Tall Paulina gets home from getting an MRI. So, Tall Paulina gets home from getting an MRI, and she's scared about losing her tough enough opportunity. But we can't unpack that because the Sex and the City piano plinking comes back, which means we're on vacation, baby.
Samee, as the Sex and the City music started playing, it really got me thinking, because we know the show has tried to be so many other shows besides a reality TV competition. So if this became an episode of Sex and the City for one episode, what are two members of the Tough Enough cast, trainers included, that you would want to see have sort of a romantic island tryst?
Okay, I'm going to say this, and it's not in the 2001 way of LOL, it's two dudes, but I would love for Taz and producer Big to have a Sex in the City tryst in the Bahamas.
You're not going to believe this. That was my same exact answer.
It's because it's the two least likable people that aren't contestants.
But it just feels like such a sitcom move for somebody to wake up in bed with producer Big. And so I think it would just be Taz, the guy who, let's be honest, he needs to let loose a little bit. He needs to chill out. And I think maybe if Taz got laid, he would relax.
I think that they would really level each other out. There's a balance there, I think. The contestants are having a really lovely time in the Bahamas. They're shown doing some activities like sailing, going down a giant water slide, sightseeing, and even petting stingrays. My goodness. We see them in an outdoor market, and Josh has purchased a wooden recorder, aka his goddamn fife, as Michael referred to it earlier. Now, Josh excitedly exclaims that he can play hot cross buns. Spoiler alert, he cannot. It's not even close.
Boy, can he not.
It's like, doot, doot, doot. Like, it's like, come on, man. This sucks. And while Josh is toot-a-looting on his fife, it cuts to a confessional from Baseball Greg, and he's like, Josh is so awesome and fun to be around. He's so unserious outside of the ring. Tall Paulina asks, well, who doesn't love Josh? And then
storm clouds roll in.
Ivy League Chris.
Just lurking in the shadows, seeing everybody having fun and being like,
Ivy League Chris immediately comes to ruin the Josh love and the vibe and says, well, he's pretty childish outside of the ring, and I don't want to be associated with Josh in public.
Everyone's having fun while Josh is cutting up, and there's even a worker at a store. She's laughing. She's having so much fun with the cast. And it just pans over to Ivy League Chris sitting on a fountain moping angrily
In the Bahamas.
In the Bahamas.
For free.
In the Bahamas for free. And he's glaring at people having fun.
Yeah, even Baseball Greg is like, you know what? Ivy League Chris, he's a bit of a wet blanket. And we definitely agree.
As always, Baseball Greg, well scouted.
Paulina takes a moment with producer Big, and she asks him if he's ever seen wrestlers who get a little scared to get back into the ring after being injured. And he's like, yes, definitely. But it really is your decision. You have the look to be a superstar, and if you want to develop into one, then you'll be rich and famous. But it's ultimately your choice, ... And it feels a little weird and kind of odd that he's just like, well, you can either be rich and famous,
or you could be nothing, dude. What do you choose? Yeah, Sammy, if it were up to you, would you rather be rich and famous or nothing?
Well, I'm a nothing right now, so a change of scenery would be nice. But Paulina takes this odd non-advice, and she seems excited, but there's also a lot of intimidation and a lot of pressure that you can see on her. Back in the hotel suite, producer Big gathers the contestants and they pull names for the visitors at the end of the week. And Josh and Greg are triumphant, which strangely, Michael, strangely makes Ivy League Chris excited. Ivy League Chris is excited because he knows that Baseball Greg's girlfriend is getting eye surgery and she wouldn't be able to visit anyway. So after the drawing, he immediately is on Baseball Greg's nuts, and he's like, well, that's such a shame, huh? Can I give you $150 for it? And Baseball Greg's like, sure. It is now Ivy League Chris's girlfriend who's coming to visit because he misses her so much. I think it was a power play, to be honest.
It felt like something a bad guy would do in a movie. It didn't feel good. But also, why pay him? If his girlfriend couldn't make it and you really wanted to see her, couldn't you just appeal to him person to person and be like, would it be okay if we switched? But no, he had to grease the freaking wheels, dude.
I really feel like that's the power play of it all. Ivy League Chris has used money before to, prove to anybody that he's better than them, much like with Daryl. He was like, you know what? I'll pay the $850. Like, I got the money for it. I've got that $15 in 2024. Like, I got it. And so now he's just throwing his fucking money bags around again. It's like, oh, I don't need to pay you for this, but I will. Also, what kind of a crazy person would keep someone else's girlfriend's schedule in mind? That's nuts, dude.
That is serial killer behavior. What is it about Chris's on Tough Enough being serial killers? What's going on here? Don't think we forgot about you, Hot Tub Chris. We know what you're all about.
All right. So after all this weird stuff, we close out the scene with Josh playing his recorder, and guess where Ivy fucking League Chris is? He is on a couch fucking reading again. Not in his room, in a common room, reading a goddamn book.
It's a different book, so he just gobbled up all of Ayn Rand, and he's just like, I need more knowledge in here.
So the contestants go out to a club called Bahama Boom Beach Club, and we see Ivy League Chris looking pretty drunk. We cut to Ivy League Chris kind of stumbling home alone to the hotel. There's a few voiceovers from his fellow contestants. Baseball Greg says that Chris has been pretty separated from the rest of the gang. Hot Tub Chris points out that people aren't as fond of Ivy League Chris as he thought, and Baseball Greg comes back in again and says that it was inevitable to see Ivy League Chris's true character come out. Did Baseball Greg know this whole time? So after we hear all of those damning voiceovers from his fellow contestants, we cut to Ivy League Chris drunkenly banging on a hotel door after he couldn't swipe in. And he's there slamming his fist into the door until we hear Nydia's voice from another area. And it turns out he was slamming on a hotel room door that wasn't even his.
Yeah, he was 3 doors down.
That is...
bands. Yeah, I know music. Anyways.
So Ivy League Chris is clearly drunk now, and he bursts into the right room, like the drunk bastard that he is. And it shows everyone else basically just sitting around watching Wheel of Fortune being incredibly wholesome while he's getting plastered.
Here's somebody you don't want in the crew. Someone who will wander off on their own and get hammered. That's not good vibes. That's not
That
who you
is
want with the
bad
crew.
vibes. Yeah, that is awful and not good. I speechless right now, actually. Josh couldn't help himself with drunk Chris, and he starts antagonizing him. It works, and Chris gets in Josh's face in a scary moment where Ivy Lee Chris grabs Josh by the collar like an 80s ass bully, and he does not care that they are in a room full of people. He gets right up in his face. Josh is sitting on the couch. Ivy Lee Chris grabs his collar, leans down into him, and Josh is like, I heard that you were making an ass of yourself tonight. And then calmly, like, you better let go.
And then Ivy League Chris just gets his face like, what did you say to me? In terms of things you could say, that's not that bad. I will also say I think Josh was a little bit emboldened because we got shirtless Maven sitting nearby, and he seemed like he was assessing the situation. And if things got a little too far, I think Maven would have stepped in. So I felt like I never worried for Josh.
The contestants go home reluctantly, and back at home, we watch Ivy Lee Chris tell his girlfriend about the visitation drawing in the weirdest way possible. Michael, would you mind reading the part of the girlfriend? Well, we had our drawing for next weekend. I didn't win the drawing.
Clearly, by the sound of your voice.
Yeah, so I actually had to go purchase one.
Oh?
So you're coming next weekend?
He paid $150 for that. He paid $150, which I put into an inflation calculator. Samee, he spent $258 on the luxury of going on having somebody go, 258 well spent, Ivy League Chris.
MTV/WWE were paying for those tickets regardless. So him throwing his fucking money bags around, what are you doing here, dog? Not a fan. But we are a fan of Baseball Greg, and he is on the phone now with his girlfriend.
She mentions that the surgery she had that took her out of the running initially got rescheduled, so she actually would be available to come out for a visit. And Greg gets really excited. He's like, oh my God, but I kind of already gave the tickets away to Ivy Lee Chris. And she's like, okay, well, did he give you the money yet? And he goes, well, no. And so she goes, well, then you can definitely still do it. Baseball Greg, it's kind of a little bit of a sticky situation. So he goes to the coolest head in the house, ladies man Maven, checking his email on the communal computer. And Samee, what happens?
Well, Maven reassures Greg that he can definitely ask Ivy Lee Chris for the opportunity to have his girlfriend come up because, Ivy Lee Chris is super reasonable and not a villain at all, and it'll be super easy and not a weird conversation. He's reasonable. Ivy Lee Chris is not reasonable. He's in fact a huge asshole.
He is such an asshole about this.
I cannot.
I couldn't believe it. I watched this episode a couple of times, and when it got to the crucial detail of he has not paid you yet, then I was just like, oh my God, Chris is such a dick.
And I think this next scene just elevates this to another level. So Greg approaches Chris. Chris is topless. He is slumped down on the couch, having this conversation with Greg. He doesn't even give him good posture while he's being a fucking dick. So he's slumped down and he's being super weird and taking a huge breath between words and sentences like he's having an asthma attack. And Ivy Lee Chris says, I know this is the only time I could see her. And I also know I don't want to make this phone call to her saying she can't come. And I also know the reason that I have to make that phone call is not because of a mistake I made. You really should have called your girlfriend before you promised it to me. I feel the mistake here was your mistake. It's not really yours to take back anymore. Reminder, he did not pay Baseball Greg for this opportunity yet.
That money is not in Greg's hand. This deal has not been set. And so it's just like, yeah, is it kind of a shitty situation? Yeah. Would I be bummed? Sure. But at the same time, Greg won fair and square. And the reason this is even happening in the first place is because of an unfortunate situation to where Greg's girlfriend wouldn't be available. So he's actually doing you a favor. And so if it all works out for Greg, Ivy League Chris should have just stepped aside and been like, you know what? This sucks for me. I thought I was going to have a chance, but it's all you, man. That's what he should have done.
What boiled me up was when Ivy League Chris said, you really should have called your girlfriend before you promised it to me.
As if this Gordon Gekko, this Patrick Bateman motherfucker wasn't in there in his head already being like, $150, dude. You know what I mean? And now all of a sudden he's like, well, you didn't read the contract, so that's not my fault. You know what I mean? That's some villain bullshit. And I'll be honest with you, Samee, I was rooting for Ivy League Chris initially. I rip up my Ivy League Chris poster and I throw it in the trash, dude.
Yes.
I am anti-Ivy League Chris from here on out.
That's what we like to see. Let's center ourselves and head back to Trax, where the trainers tease Josh because he has returned with a sunburn from the Bahamas. Al Snow puts tape on his nose and draws a kitty cat face on him.
I needed kitty cat Josh because I needed some levity after this whole girlfriend visit BS happened.
Guess what? There's still a little bit more, baby!
No!
Producer Big needs the names of the folks coming to visit. Josh is bringing his gal Jamie in, and Greg reveals that it's Ivy League Chris that's having someone visit instead of him. And here's the final straw, Michael. All of this nonsense, all of this psycho behavior, all of this bribery. Ivy League Chris's girlfriend's name is also Chris.
What?
Her name is Christine. Ivy League Chris dating a Christine feels sinister. Feels like something's going on. They met at school.
Here's the thing. I think it's kind of cool.
Okay. All right. That's fair. It feels sinister.
It does feel a little bit sinister. And here's the thing. I'm a little bit sinister too. That's why I want to do it.
You're right. You were cheering for Ivy League Chris. We don't know when you switched. So maybe that wasn't the straw. That was the straw for me.
It skeeved me out to see. As somebody who that is on my bucket list, so I was, in a way, I was jealous of Ivy League Chris. It also was skeevy, and it did make me kind of examine my own desires and behavior and look at them under a new light.
So after all of that, Big gathers the trainers only, and he tells them that Tall Paulina has a partially torn knee ligament, a partially broken bone at the top of her leg, and a knee strain. But the decision is up to her. After that laundry list of injuries, I don't really think the decision is up to her. I think she's out.
Yeah, I think it's in God's hands now. I don't think.
It's like, what are you guys talking about? She's got a partially broken bone? No, she's out.
You go to the mechanic. It's like, look, you don't have an engine anymore. The gas tank is on fire. And all 4 of the wheels have turned into scorpions. But if you want to drive it, that's up to you. It's like, I don't think it is up to me, actually. I think I'm in a Greek myth. Like, I don't think this is up to me anymore.
But now we're back at Trax, and Paulina is so overwhelmed with the decision she has had to make that she whispers her announcement to Al. I'm gonna withdraw. Everybody feels this one. And she's hugging everybody. She has sweet little notes for all of the trainers expressing her gratitude. And while she's hugging Nydia and Taylor, we see just how tall she is compared to them.
Especially when she's hugging tiny little Taylor.
I know. She like has to fold in half because Taylor's not even an average height, I think. She's like maybe 5'4". In Paulina's farewell confessional, she says that she will be back to trying to be a wrestler once her injuries heal. Thank goodness. And so I ask you, Michael, what are your thoughts on Paulina's departure? Were you surprised at all to see a self-elimination due to injury?
I was, to be completely honest. Last episode, I was just like, oh, there's no way anybody else is going to self-eliminate. Everybody else in the contest wants this so bad that they are going to stick with it until the very end. Injuries are something you can't see coming. So I think obviously she didn't want to get injured. And so if it were up to her, it would have been up to an elimination. But as we said, this was a decision that was not up to her, despite what the producers insist.
Her knees were making the decision 100%.
Her knees were like, oh, hey, I have a thought. And then crunch, crack.
No. At this point in the competition, if Paulina hadn't self-eliminated, do you think that she would have been on the chopping block anyway?
Most definitely, because
Okay.
I think at this point in the contest, every time they cut to footage of people doing the moves, everybody seems to be soaring, whereas it felt like Tall Paulina was still kind of struggling with some of the basics. It's like her and Hot Tub Chris both seem to not quite have the hang of wrestling training, whereas it seems like everybody else so far has.
Yeah.
So I think they absolutely are in the lower part of the pack. Watch your back, Hot Tub Chris.
All right, well, at the end of episode 7, we find out Paulina is not tough enough.
Do you also think she like faked all this back and knee bullshit to like run off to see Shadrack one more time?
Oh my gosh.
Because they had that charged moment right when Shadrack got eliminated, and she's the very next off the show.
That is something we should have dug into. We
That's a
should have seen who
conspiracy theory.
they've married.
Up next, we have episode 8, Injuries Start Piling Up. Original air date, August 9th, 2001. Samee, do you have any alternate titles for this episode?
Oh yeah, I would say hard for Matt Hardy.
I would say alternate title, Hanging with the Hardy Boys.
Alternate title. Oh no, we all have owies.
So we start at the Trax training facility where Al Snow adds yet another chair to the Tough Enough graveyard. The mood is somber, but Al reminds the crew that this is a competition and things are only going to get harder. The cast is down to 7, and with Tall Paulina's exit, that means that only Dancer Nydia and Tiny Taylor remain in the women's division, meaning that they will be competing directly. And Samee, I got to ask, why do we always try to pit women against each other? We do a workout montage where we zoom around the facility and everyone's feeling the wear and tear of training. Al Snow kicks things up a notch when he teaches them a body slam, a move that for the very first time in their wrestling training puts their opponent's safety directly in their hands.
He says once you pick up your opponent, you are in charge of getting them to the ground. And I thought that was really heartwarming for some reason. And I feel like maybe this is the part of the episode where I say, wrestling is so damn cute.
It is sweet, and it is nice to get that reminder of every time you're doing wrestling, right? You're putting somebody's safety in your hands. But it did get me thinking, how do you think these moves would have gone had someone like Bad Boy Daryl or Stunt Woman Victoria attempted these advanced maneuvers?
Oh, I think somebody would have died. There is no way those knuckleheads would have been safe. They weren't even safe on themselves.
They weren't even safe on themselves. And it just would have been so funny to see Bad Boy Daryl, body slam Bobby Joe, and then she bounces like a basketball and then flies into space. And then him being like, she really didn't set me up right. And you're like, Bad Boy Daryl, this is on you, dude. What else does it? Could you imagine if bodybuilder Jason had been involved in the your girlfriend's going to come up to visit conversation?
Oh, he would have had a complete meltdown. He would have withdrawn all of the money in his bank account. He would have said that he would stop eating meat for a year.
And we know my man loves his porterhouses. So this would have been, that would have been a huge sacrifice for him. As the pressure is heating up, Baseball Greg is nervous. He reveals that he has a previous back injury that he's been working through the entire competition. So the specter of another herniated disc is looming over his training, but he's determined to push through. But Baseball Greg isn't the only person worried about injuries, because Stone Cold Josh gets a bone bruise on his hip and Nydia hurts her shin or twists her ankle or something. And they're both put on the bench and have to sit out for a week.
Have you ever hurt your shin? Have you ever had anything land on your shin? The shin, much like your forearm, is made up of 2 bones, one big one, one little one. I've had several heavy objects drop on it, and it is the scariest moment because that's a bone that's 2 bones that just go in half.
Like a wishbone.
Yeah, it's scary. So I can see why Nydia is like, you know what? This hurts.
Yeah, and it's also, I think at this point, the trainers, Paulina just had to leave because of injury. So I think the trainers are like, chill, relax, take a week off where you're going to be all right. Miss Jackie, Tori, and Al explain to the contestants that this getting hurt, this wear and tear, this is all part of the wrestling training. Your body will break down, so then it can callus up so that when you take the bumps, it will just feel more natural. You just have to trust the process. Samee.
Yeah. It's like, you're a musician, much like developing calluses after slapping the bass. Your skin stops being sensitive and soft and just becomes callous. I get it.
Just the thought of having my spine callous freaks me out. So
Okay,
it just got
sure.
to me existentially, I guess. With Nydia sidelined, Tiny Taylor is soaring in training. They do an exercise where the contestants are asked to put together a match using everything they've learned so far. And then Al is going to climb up and get his little 2001 camera, and he's going to film it. Then everybody's going to watch the match back. And then Al is going to live critique the match in front of the whole class. How do you feel like you would fare during this kind of challenge to have your match filmed and then Al Snow beat by beat breaks it down and critiques it? Would you like it, or would that make you self-conscious?
I would like it, but in a sick way. So I would be obsessed with being silently overly critical of myself, but also I would just be obsessed with watching myself and seeing how things move. And because it really is a rare opportunity to see yourself moving. Because yeah, we have mirrors, but that's really not the same thing. So to see yourself in action, I think, yeah, I'd probably be a little bit obsessed because I'm sick.
I would only watch a match of myself if I could hire a VFX team to digitally remove me from the footage. Then and only then would I watch myself. No way.
I do love that Al calls Taylor a salty dog, because when they cut to the footage they took of her, she is kind of like sauntering around.
So producer Big sends the injured Nydia and Josh home while the rest of the cast heads to WWE headquarters to pump iron. But back at the mansion, Nydia is run down. She's on the verge of a breakdown, and suffice it to say, morale is low. Everybody's bummed out. They walk into Trax the next day to see ladders set up in the ring. Then the Hardy Boys and Lita pop out of nowhere and greet the contestants.
Matt Hardy leans on the ring ropes and goes, "Tough enough, crew. What's going on?" The ooh la la that came out of my mouth. The swagger.
Samee, this is why we are best friends and podcasting partners, because Sammy's not exaggerating. They open the doors and they just look, and they're like, they see ladders, and then all of a sudden you just see the Hardy Boys flipping around, and then you see Matt Hardy being like, "Tough enough, crew. What's going on?" I was just like, I fainted.
Dude.
My soul came out of my body, and then I just watched with bated breath the rest of the episode. The Hardy Boys come across so cool in this episode of Tough Enough.
Well, Matt does.
I feel like Lita and Jeff Hardy, they were kind of hanging back and looking cool, whereas Matt Hardy, well, he's the mouthpiece of the group, apparently.
And what a mouthpiece. I was really shocked to find that apparently I'm a Matt Hardy guy. After Tough Enough Crew, what's going on? Like, I just can't. Oh, man.
Yeah.
That's wild.
Absolutely. And so here's the thing, Samee, you are a Matt Hardy guy, but
apparently
dancer Nydia, she's a Jeff Hardy guy, and she reveals in a talking head that she pretty much wants to straight up bang Jeff Hardy.
This is what was weird, is that she says it and she goes, "I have been looking for Jeff Hardy for years." What do you mean you've been looking for Jeff Hardy? You know where he is.
Yeah, where?
They have a tour schedule.
Did you go to North Carolina to try to find, like, where did you go to try to find Jeff Hardy? What's going on here?
Yeah, it was a little much.
So we go from there to a little wrestling seminar from the Hardys. We get an extended exclusive footage where the Hardys talk about how they broke into the business at 16, lying about their age so they could wrestle Scott Hall. Lita mentions how she didn't respect the business at first. She thought it was just rednecks fake punching each other, but then she finally came around to see that wrestling was truly about athleticism. It was about performance, and the traveling lifestyle just seems to work for her. And it was here that I noticed, Samee, between the Hardy Boys and then Kurt Angle last episode, I really feel like the quality of the exclusive footages the past two episodes have been par excellence. Who knew having wrestlers that we like talk about wrestling would be compelling TV? Who knew?
I feel differently a little bit, because I think that Kurt Angle's was a little bit of a dud.
Hearing Kurt Angle say, "I only do like 30 minutes of cardio, but I do it every day," I was like, he's just like me for real.
You're just like an Olympian.
Kurt Angle. I could be like, I could win a gold medal.
That's fair. But, the Hardys, said something that really put a tickle in my eye, which was when they were younger, when they were watching wrestling matches, they started really like emulating everything that they saw, and they started dissecting everything to the point where they discovered that a lot of movements happen on the left side. And I did not know that. And I think that that's really cool.
That's what I feel like an exclusive footage should be. Hearing
Mhm.
wrestlers we like talk about stuff that's interesting.
Yeah, the interesting part I would love to highlight and underline a couple of times.
Yeah, really send that to the Tough Enough exclusive footage gatherers. Be like, hey, just if it's not interesting, you can just cut it.
If it's just a long-winded story, we don't need to hear all of it.
So the traders have the cast hop in the ring with Team Extreme, but since Josh and Nydia are still injured, they can't take part. And this crushes Josh, who wanted nothing more than to flip around with the boys. And he admits that he snuck off to the bathroom to cry. And I guess, Samee, is there any wrestler that if you missed a chance to hang out with them, you would also cry?
We recently saw fan cam footage of Randy Orton post-match signing shit, just fucking ripping a vape. Just his head was just a cloud of fucking vape smoke. And I think it's Randy, man. I think Randy and I would get along.
So Samee walks into the Trax facility and you just see Randy Orton, tough enough crew. What's going on? And then Sammy's like, I don't get to hang out. I don't get to rip vapes with the boys.
In the ring, specifically.
You maniac. The Hardys run the cast through drills, and I gotta say, the contestants have improved dramatically since the start of the show. It even builds to the point, people are doing moves, and I honestly was really impressed with everybody's progress. It even gets to the point at the end of a, everybody doing moves montage where you see Baseball Greg gets to get the signature leg drop from Matt Hardy.
That's nice.
And Baseball Greg says it's the honor of a lifetime. Before they leave, Matt leaves the cast with some words of wisdom. I know you guys are beat up, but once you join the WWF, there will never be a week that goes by that you will not be beat up. But don't worry, it's amazing what you can accomplish when you're hurt. And then they leave.
That's what a note to leave on. Hardy boys.
You guys might get hurt, but you'd be surprised how you can still go grocery shopping even when you're hurt. But I think it's just this was the morale boost that everybody needed. The contestants are buzzing after Team Extreme's visit, and they're eager to jump back into training and demonstrate their skills. But while delivering a routine arm drag to Maven, Baseball Greg re-injures his back. This one hurt.
Yeah, back injuries are no joke.
As somebody with back injuries, yeah, I immediately was like, I know, I in a way know what that feels like. Greg takes Al Snow aside, and there is a really tearful, heart-wrenching scene where he has to admit to Al that he's had back problems this entire time, and they finally caught up with him. It's a huge blow because everybody knows that Greg is one of the front runners of this competition. But at the same time, they don't want him to push through and work injured and risk suffering a career-threatening injury. Yeah. And so they urge Greg not to rush to any major decisions just yet. They want him to heal, get some professional medical advice, and then see what all his options are.
Seeing our boy Baseball crying here was just so heartbreaking because you really felt like his frustration with his body, his concern with his body, but also just how much he cares and is determined. It's all there in his sad little face. Do you think you would cry if you found out that you might have to self-eliminate from a competition show?
Would I cry if I received life-crushing, disappointing news? I'd like to think that I would. I'm a human being with emotions.
All right, fair. You got me there, dog.
Hey, Samee,
Yeah.
I got a question for you. If something really sad happened to you, would you be sad?
No.
I know you were looking to me to say something sarcastic and maybe funny, but no, I would cry. I'm not ashamed to admit that I would definitely cry like Baseball Greg. Unfortunately, Baseball Greg has to sit out. He hops on the bench, and as Baseball Greg's hitting the bench, we got Josh and Nydia back from injury. They're back in the action, and Nydia, her time away has lit a fire underneath her, and she she comes in like determined to show that she hasn't lost a step. So they're putting together practice matches, and Nydia's is so successful that it earns the respect of her entire class. So, right, I think when we were starting to be like, wow, Nydia's kind of out of the mix and Taylor's pulling ahead, I think Nydia comes back from injury immediately to be like, don't count me out just yet. I got a trick or two.
It just seems like she's on one, really, to make up for her injury, because even before she officially gets back in the ring, she picks up doing more calisthenics drills, which really pumps Al up and puts a tiny little sparkle in his eye.
So it's like, while that sparkles in his eye, unfortunately, we see Greg go to a hospital where he gets an x-ray. But Samee, the results are inconclusive.
Oh my
and
God.
The doctor's not sure if he's going to be cleared to wrestle or not. And if they want to know for sure, Baseball Greg's going to have to undergo some more tests.
Oh my gosh. Michael, this is the end of episode 8, and there were no eliminations. How are you feeling about the remaining contestants?
I'm taking all the good energy I have, all the good luck, and I'm sending it back to 2001. You know what I mean? I'm just like, I'm hoping and I'm praying that Baseball Greg is going to be able to bounce back and become tough enough champion.
Me too.
If for whatever reason something were to happen, I mean, who am I supposed to root for? One of the Chris's? I don't know, dude.
It's tough. We're in a real tough spot. Without Greg.
It's becoming without Greg, it becomes a little bit more of a tightrope walk. And so who am I rooting for competition, it's heating up. And so I'm really hoping that Baseball Greg is able to pull through so I don't have to find somebody else to root for.
Who would you have eliminated at the end of this episode?
I'm trying not to let my personal problems with Ivy League Chris cloud my judgment. So instead of picking on him, I think I'll allow my personal hatred towards Hot Tub Chris to cloud my judgment and say, get him out of the house.
Yeah, I wouldn't eliminate Taylor or Nydia. I wouldn't eliminate Baseball Greg. I wouldn't eliminate Maven. So now we're left with Josh and the Chris's. Yeah, I think it would be Hot Tub Chris for me as well.
The Josh and the Chris's and the silver spoon.
Okay, everybody. That was our breakdown of episodes 7 and 8 of season 1 of Tough Enough. Thank you for listening to Wrestling Academy, hosted, produced, and edited by Michael Classic and me, Samee Hunyo. Follow us on Instagram, TikTok, and YouTube at Wrestling Academy Pod, or send us an email at wrestlingacademypod@gmail.com.
You can follow, rate, and leave a positive review wherever you get your podcast, but check out Spotify where we have Q&As and polls for every single episode. And please, if you have any information on Ween Kid, go to our website, wrestlingacademy.university, to send in an anonymous tip, or you can call the Ween Kid tip line and leave us a voicemail at 708-669-4512. And the Josh and the Chris and the silver spoon and the silver blue and the man.